Whispers in the dark, a love worth fighting for. The snow of Mount Rainier still lingered in my memory, but the smell of disinfectant in the hospital room pulled me back to reality. Ethan Cole's fingertips, cool from just waking up, brushed the tears from my cheeks like melting snowflakes, a faint, imperceptible tremor lingering as his pads caressed my skin. His eyes remained as profound as ever, veiled in a mist that hadn't lifted in 7 years. The restraint he'd always hidden was gone, replaced only by the cherished relief of finding me again, his gaze heavy with unspoken tenderness. All cried out, he chuckled hoarsely, his voice rough as sandpaper, still bearing the rasp of a narrow escape. If you keep crying, this freshly awakened man will be overwhelmed with worry. Doctors said I can't get emotional. Do you want me back in the ICU? I threw myself into his arms, clutching the hem of his hospital gown so tightly my knuckles whitened. The fabric still carried the chill of Mount Rainier, and the sharp tang of disinfectant, as if letting go would make him vanish again into the blizzard. You idiot, I sobbed, hitting his chest with feather-light blows that carried the weight of endless fear and grievance. Who told you to actually climb Mount Rainier? Who told you to take my angry words seriously? That snow, that steep mountain, if something had happened to you, the rest dissolved into broken sobs, tears streaming like unstrung pearls, soaking the front of his gown. He let me vent, his arm looping steadily around my waist, firm enough to hold me close, gentle enough not to restrain. His chin rested on top of my head, warm breath fanning my hair as his voice softened, sweet enough to melt snow. I've always taken your words seriously. He paused, his fingertips brushing the faint scar on my wrist, the lingering mark of my past self-harm. The deep red hue had faded long ago, but it remained an indelible brand beneath my skin, now mirrored by the matching cigarette burn on his wrist. Calloused from years of use, his fingers traced the scar gently, as if soothing a long-buried wound. I couldn't protect you back then, let you bear it all alone. Now I want to give you everything, even a fleeting legend about elves. I need you to know, your wishes mean more to me than anything. The steady beep of medical equipment filled the room, marking the passage of time as sunlight broke through the clouds outside. Through the Venetian blinds, dappled light danced on the floor, swaying softly with the breeze. I pressed my ear to his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, strong, rhythmic, like a drumbeat that chased away the endless anxiety of these days. In that moment, fragmented memories clicked together like a puzzle, vivid and brutal enough to take my breath away. The cicadas' chirping had been unusually loud that sophomore year, the air thick with the sweet scent of California orange blossoms, but it had marked the start of a lifelong nightmare. That afternoon, Ethan and I had fought over something trivial, neither willing to back down in our youthful stubbornness. I'd run out of the classroom in tears, ignoring his calls behind me. As I walked out of the Los Angeles suburban high school building, several construction workers stopped me. They'd been installing air conditioners, and I'd given them directions earlier. I'd thought they'd come to thank me, but one of them suddenly grinned maliciously, grabbing my arm and dragging me toward the tool shed behind the building. What are you doing? Let me go. I struggled desperately, but my screams were drowned out by the cicadas and the distant school bell. A rough hand clamped over my mouth, filling my nose with the stench of cigarette smoke and sweat that made me gag. The tool shed was dark and damp, reeking of motor oil and dust. They threw me to the cold concrete floor, their fists and feet raining down like hail. I curled into a ball, protecting my head, feeling the dull ache of bones hitting concrete, and the sting of their obscene taunts. One of them lit a cigarette, its glowing embers flickering in the dark. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up, and pressed the burning tip hard against my wrist. A searing pain exploded across my skin with a sickening sizzle, making my body convulse. Tears poured out, but I couldn't make a sound. They snatched the milk from my backpack, twisting off the cap and pouring the white liquid over my head. It streamed down my hair and face, soaking my school uniform, sticking to my skin in a sticky mess. Mixed with sweat and dirt, it reeked of something foul. They laughed loudly around me, their voices like needles piercing my heart, more devastating than any physical pain. From the cruel red glow of sunset to the stars spreading over California's plains, those 3 hours felt like an eternity. I endured unspeakable torment until a janitor passed by the shed and found me unconscious, rushing to call the police. When I woke up again, I was in a Los Angeles County hospital bed, wrapped in bandages, every movement agony. The burn on my wrist festered, leaving a scar that would never fade, while the trauma deep inside trapped me in a permanent shadow. I later learned some of those men were drug addicts, driven to their monstrous acts by their addiction. Meanwhile, after I'd run out, Ethan had waited downstairs, kicking pebbles, hoping I'd calm down. When he saw the ambulance speeding by, he'd raced to the hospital, one shoe lost in his panic. He'd guarded my hospital room for 3 days and nights, his eyes red as he watched me through the window, too afraid to come in, fearing his presence would trigger more terrible memories. In the years that followed, he'd fought tirelessly, pulling every string to ensure the perpetrators paid. He'd uncovered their prior convictions and linked them to other crimes, finally sending them to California State Prison, where they met a brutal end at the hands of fellow inmates within months. But Ethan had never mentioned any of this to me. He'd simply arranged for the best therapists, sat through my recovery sessions, and watched helplessly as I withdrew into myself. I'd grown sensitive and paranoid, terrified of human contact, trapped in severe mental distress. Nightmares plagued me, dark scenes, menacing grins, waking me in a cold sweat. I flinched from even the gentlest touch, trembling at the thought of closeness. I locked myself in my room, refusing to talk, refusing treatment, even hurting myself to ease the pain inside. Ethan had watched me spiral, desperate and helpless. Knowing I refused medication, he'd mixed mild sleep aids and mood stabilizers into my milk, forcing me to drink it. I'd poured it out again and again, and he'd heated fresh glasses each time, his eyes filled with heartache and resignation. Fearing for my safety, he'd taken me to his apartment in Seattle, keeping me close with almost obsessive protectiveness. He'd bought a secure, secluded house in the suburbs, hiring someone to care for me, but it only made me feel more trapped. My memories had grown muddled under the weight of pain, and I'd started to escape by blaming the person closest to me. I'd seen Ethan as a tormentor, his kindness as control. I'd invented Leah, a so-called first love, framing her as my enemy. I'd imagined Jesse, a gentle boy, seeing him as my salvation. What I didn't know was that Leah had been my high school gaming ID, and Jesse had been Ethan's. He'd played along with my delusions, fighting my imaginary enemies, even secretly practicing my favorite game heroes to save me whenever I felt threatened. He'd felt jealous of my attachment to Jesse, but he'd kept quiet, all because the doctor said it would help me heal. "I'm sorry," I whispered, pulling back to look at him, my nose brushing his jaw, feeling the sharp line of his bones beneath his skin. Tears still flowed relentlessly. "I thought you were a monster, blamed you for everything, hit you, yelled at you, even wanted to leave you." He reached up, pinching my cheek gently, his fingertips cool, his eyes filled with fondness, and a hint of helpless amusement. "I'm the one who should apologize." His fingers traced the curve of my eyebrows, down to the corners of my eyes, his touch impossibly soft. "If I hadn't fought with you that day, if I'd insisted on walking you home, none of this would have happened. All these years I've watched you suffer, watched you shut down, watched you stare at empty rooms, all I could do was hold on to you tightly. I was afraid if I let go, you'd disappear forever, somewhere I'd never find you. So I was selfish, unreasonable, forcing you to do things you hated." His thumb brushed away fresh tears from my cheek, his voice growing even softer. "I knew all along, you didn't hate milk. You hated the humiliation of having it poured over you. You didn't want to push me away. You were afraid of being hurt again. Ella, I'm sorry it took you so long to believe how much I love you." The soft footsteps of a nurse passed outside the door, fading quickly, as if afraid to disturb the tenderness in the room. I buried my face in his chest again, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing, listening to his gentle words. Suddenly, the pain that had weighed on me for so long felt lighter, as if quietly smoothed away. This was what it meant to be cherished, no force, no control, just careful protection, the unshakable courage to fight the world for you, the certainty that you're precious, even with all your scars. Mia came by once more later. This time, she didn't snap or sneer. She just set down a basket of fruit awkwardly, muttering, "Bro, if you ever make her sad again, I'll never forgive you." Watching her walk away, I suddenly remembered how she'd slipped me snacks in high school, secretly standing up for me when teachers scolded me. Those forgotten moments of warmth emerged from the dust of memory. She'd cared all along, just never knew how to show it. Watching her brother and me suffer had torn her apart. On the day I was discharged, Ethan held my hand as we walked out of the hospital. The sun shone warmly, no longer harsh. He took me home, not to the secure suburban house, but to a small apartment in downtown Seattle. Hanging on the living room wall was our wedding photo. I was smiling brightly in a simple white dress, his arm around my shoulders, his eyes filled with softness, sunlight bathing us in a warm glow. "This is where we got married 4 years ago," he said softly. "You told me you loved the coziness of it, small enough for just the two of us." Staring at the girl in the photo, memories buried under medication and delusions resurfaced. We'd made a lifelong promise without me even remembering. 4 years earlier, when my mental health had spiraled out of control, he'd stayed by my side, calming me patiently. When I'd stabilized slightly, he'd taken me to King County Courthouse to get married. He'd skipped a grand wedding, decorating this little home simply, as I'd wished. "As long as we're together," he'd said, "that's the perfect ceremony." All these years he'd guarded this home, guarded me, even when I hurt him, pushed him away, again and again. For 7 years, he'd walked with me out of hell, protecting me with a lifetime of devotion. He'd never abandoned me for my brokenness, never left because of my paranoia. He'd been like a beam of light, forcing its way into my dark world, dispelling the shadows little by little, teaching me to trust and love again. That night, he put on an apron and busied himself in the kitchen. I sat on the living room couch, watching his back, my heart warm. He cooked my favorite dishes, California rolls and roasted chicken, and heated a glass of milk, setting it beside me without pressure. "Drink it if you want," he said. "From now on, I'll listen to you." I picked up the glass, the warm liquid sliding down my throat. No longer did I feel the old revulsion, only the faint sweetness of milk. The painful memories associated with it faded, softened by his gentle presence. Leaning against his chest, watching the stars outside, I whispered, "Ethan, let's start over." He tightened his arms around me, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead, the scent of milk lingering on his lips. "Yes." From this moment on, only joy, no more past. In the days that followed, he accompanied me to therapy, listening patiently as I talked, standing by me as I faced those painful memories. He took me for walks along Puget Sound, showed me the Seattle Space Needle at night, treated me to fresh seafood at Pike Place Market, slowly helping me rediscover the joy of living. He remembered all my little quirks. I hated onions, loved blueberry pie, woke up easily at night, clinging to something for comfort. Whenever nightmares came, he'd hold me tightly, whispering reassurances, "I'm here. You're safe." He took me back to our high school, the public school in suburban Los Angeles. It had changed a lot, renovated classrooms, a new plastic track. We walked along the paths we'd once taken, sunlight filtering through leaves in dappled patterns. He held my hand, telling me, "It's all over. The bad guys got what they deserved. You don't have to be afraid anymore." He pointed to the basketball court nearby. "I used to play here. You'd sit on the bleachers, handing me water, cheering me on." As I looked at the court, blurry images emerged: a sunny afternoon, a boy in a white t-shirt sweating on the court, a girl on the bleachers holding a water bottle, her eyes following him, a soft smile on her lips. That was our youth, pure, beautiful, free of pain and shadows. Slowly, I began to reach out to others, still nervous but no longer terrified. Mia visited often, dragging me shopping at Seattle's malls, buying me pretty clothes, sharing her college stories. Our relationship healed, returning to the closeness we'd shared in high school. She complained about club drama, gossiped about Hollywood, and teased us about having a baby to liven up the house. 6 months later, Ethan took me back to Mount Rainier. The mountain stood tall as ever, covered in snow, glistening against the blue sky, like a painting. This time, no blizzards, no avalanches, only warm sunshine and the two of us, walking side by side. He held my hand, climbing steadily to the summit. The wind was crisp at the top. He took off his jacket, wrapping it around me, pulling me close. Beside the rock said to be haunted by elves, he dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Opening it, he revealed a simple ring, no flashy diamonds, just delicate engravings inside, our names, and a tiny phrase, forever and always, never apart. Ella, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with endless love, sunlight gilding his face, making him look even softer. Once, I wanted to bear all your pain, shield you from every hurt. But now I need you to know, your happiness is my greatest wish. For the rest of my life, I'll stand by you, chasing away every shadow, giving you all my tenderness. I'll walk with you through every landscape, share every ordinary moment, grow old with you. Will you marry me again? I nodded, tears streaming down my face, tears of joy, relief, happiness. I held out my hand, watching as he slid the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit. He stood up, lifting me into his arms, holding me so tightly it felt like we were merging into one. In the distance, Mount Rainier shone brightly in the sun, as if elves really were blessing us. The wind carried the scent of snow and love. Resting my head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, feeling his warm embrace, I finally understood. The most beautiful redemption isn't escaping hell, it's having someone who lights a candle in the darkness, walking with you step by step toward the light. Ethan Cole, the man I'd once mistaken for a monster, the man who'd guarded me all his life, he'd become my only light. Snow falls with a homecoming, love shines bright at last. The scars may never fully fade, remaining as faint reminders in my life. But time will wrap them gently, and love will soften them slowly, becoming the strongest foundation of our love. And in the years ahead, we'll heal each other, cherish each other, walking through every season, until forever.